Hello everybody, SlimKirby here, and I'm going on a long journey of trying to complete every single Game Boy Advance game in North America. This is the story of the highs, the lows, and all the silly stuff in between for the Game Boy Advance completion experience. This is GB Ace. Game number 20, Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a confession to make. As I was growing up, I did not partake in the Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z craze. I know, it seems like something perfect for a male nerd like me, but what can I say, I just wasn't really interested back then. I guess I was just more in tune with the video game side of my dorkdom, and much less anime, comic books, and all those other types of media. I was aware of the franchise's existence though, as numerous friends of mine throughout the years had some form of attachment to it. I just never really got into it personally. In more recent years, I have been a little more open to taking a chance on it though, and after watching a couple of episodes with some of my friends in the past, most notably earlier this year, literally on New Year's Day 2025, I figured that it might finally be time to check this phenomenon out. And hey, what a coincidence, I just so happened to draw a Dragon Ball game for this series. How convenient. Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure was released in North America in June of 2005, developed by Dimps and published in this particular region by Atari. However, the Japanese publisher is Bon Presto, the same company responsible for that Battle Racers game I played back during 2024's Super 16 event. Anyway, I'll be real with you guys, there are a lot of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z games for this system. 8, in fact. It won't be the most for this challenge, as some of the more obvious video game giants will have more, and heck, even Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a slight edge in that department with 10 games for crying out loud. But it's still a decent amount, and we will definitely be coming back to this franchise pretty regularly throughout GB Ace's lifespan. I decided on doing this game first though, one because, well, it represents the first chapter of the series, so that alone makes a lot of sense to focus on Dragon Ball first before jumping into more prominent Z stuff, but I also divided up the collection based on whether they were narrative games, fighting games, or the uniquely singled out card game. This game fits in more with the narrative crowd, since it's about the actual story of the franchise, since it progresses through key elements and arcs of the original Dragon Ball series, even if it does technically have fighting elements in it, but I guess technically all of Dragon Ball has that. Plus, it just seemed like a good title to start with to get my feet wet, and since I was a fish out of water for this, it's probably best to start from the very beginning anyway. So, without further delay, let's get right into it. Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure is what's commonly referred to as a beat-em-up game. Mostly. Okay, it's like 85% beat-em-up, but like 15% fighting game too, and I'll get into why I say that later. Essentially, much like other famous beat-em-ups that exist like Double Dragon, Final Fight, the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle arcade games, you essentially progress through a stage by fighting your way to the end of it. You're given a character with some basic combat moves and abilities, progress across the land, sometimes even doing platforming of some kind, or just in general interacting with the environment, fighting endless spawns of mooks and grunt soldiers, sometimes even being dragged into forced encounters along the way, and taking on much larger and stronger bosses to complete the stage and advance to the next part of the story. Now, normally, I'm not that much of a fan of these types of games. Well, correction, I'm not a fan of more retro versions of these games, where the difficulty is so hard because the developers wanted their players to spend as many quarters as possible in each of their play sessions, so they were generally made to be more difficult than they probably should have been otherwise. I hated that design mentality, and it honestly turned me off and away from a lot of the arcade fighters and beat-em-ups because of that. However, when a game like this is made more casually, especially with a really fun multiplayer element, I can get on board with it. I really loved Castle Crashers back in the day when I played it with friends, or heck, even by myself, and I even had a good time playing the most recent Ninja Turtles beat-em-up Shredder's Revenge with my friend Odin's a few years ago. So yeah, I can definitely enjoy this genre, it just needs a more forgiving difficulty curve for me to stay interested and invested. That's all. So what exactly do we need to do to beat this game? Well, quite simply, there is a story mode we can play through, so I guess that will be our basic condition for this challenge. Beat story mode. If you have played this game before though, do not worry, I will address the extra content after the fact. Let's just focus on the main goal of this challenge first. Also, there was a difficulty option involved, and normal did seem to be the default here, so we will be playing on that to complete this game. It was the middle option of the three, so I can at least take solace in the fact that it's not the hardest or the easiest, just something right in the middle. Oh, and I suppose this is pretty important for a game like this, especially if you're someone who is currently trying to watch this series, or who is planning on watching it sometime in the future, but I will be talking about the story pretty extensively here, at least in terms of what's detailed in this game. I'm pretty sure they don't stick to the entire canon of the narrative, like some events might be slightly altered, and some events and results might be different from what actually happens in the story, but key events and arcs are still addressed and talked about, so if you don't want any spoilers for Dragon Ball, you may want to skip this video until you familiarize yourself with, at the very least, everything from Goku's first meeting with Bulma up until the final battle with King Piccolo, which is basically just the first couple of arcs. If you don't really care though, feel free to stick around, but you have been properly warned just in case. The story of this game follows Goku, a little guy who can pack quite the punch when brought into a fight. One day, he has a chance meeting with a girl named Bulma, who is eagerly searching for the legendary Dragon Balls, spherical orbs with stars on them, where it's said if all 7 are gathered together, you can summon the eternal dragon Shinron to grant any wish the holder of the balls desires. Goku happens to have one of the Dragon Balls in his possession, which fascinates Bulma, and soon the two go on an adventure to see if they can find and obtain the rest of them. It's at this point where the gameplay actually starts, and as you can see, it's definitely a beat 'em up. You control Goku and you quite literally try to beat up anything that moves on screen while trying to avoid damage yourself. And from the absolute get-go, I have to say, this game feels amazing to control. Other beat-em-ups I've played in the past always felt really stiff, or they were fine, but everything around could pretty much stop you at any turn. This was not the case here. Goku feels very quick and very responsive, and it feels like you can quite literally just mash the attack button to win, which may seem not too exciting to some, but for me, I don't know, I get some sort of an euphoric rush from this type of gameplay, where I can kind of just turn my brain off for a few minutes and take out all of my pent-up internal stresses in one therapeutic activity. It's kind of why I love the Koei Warriors games so much, as they're great for releasing those types of endorphins into the human body. See people, if you get mad or aggressive, just play a game like this. You'll feel better in no time. There's also other maneuvers you can do with Goku as well, including some air attacks and dash attacks, even a projectile reflecting move. I wouldn't say it's as complicated as a fighting game's controls, but there is some variety at least, and that's always a good thing. Along the way though, although it wasn't as much of an issue here, you will have to do platforming in addition to fighting, so keep that in mind. Although, like I said earlier, the game itself feels incredibly smooth, so don't worry one bit about that being too much of an issue. After beating through numerous enemies and collecting some items here and there, we make it to the boss of the stage, Bear Thief, who is attacking a poor defenseless sea turtle. The boss has a relatively simple and predictable attacking pattern, so we take him out pretty easily with Goku's very quick and powerful fighting style. The turtle, thankful for our assistance, assists us by leading us to the edge of the sea, where we meet the man himself, Master Roshi. He gives us a means for getting around in the form of the flying Nimbus, and actually lets us have one of the Dragon Balls as well for our ever-growing collection. And he lets us have this completely free, no strings attached, because this is an E10 rated game, of course. Yeah, there couldn't possibly have been anything else happening here, clearly. Goku and Bulma head to their next destination, where they run into Oolong, who has been causing some trouble in a nearby small village. This village promises Goku the gift of a Dragon Ball if they manage to stop this swine, so that's pretty much what they do. Oolong does try to get away, but since we have the flying Nimbus, we can pursue and take him out mid-flight, so not really a problem for us at all. Also, yeah, as far as the Flying Nimbus stages control, it's really not too much different than the normal beat-em-up stages. There's just free-range movement with no platforming, plus you really only do this like 3 times in the game anyway, so not really a super relevant part of the game to be honest. We take out Oolong, and with another Dragon Ball acquired, we make our way to the wilderness where we run into the desert bandit Yamcha and his little feline companion Puar, and we immediately get drawn into a fight as a result. Yamcha goes down really easily, which is kind of funny in retrospect when considering the canon, but that's neither here nor there. Really just kind of a small break in the action at the end of the day. We make our way to the Fire Mountain, home of the mighty Ox King, who just so happens to be a pupil of Master Roshi, the old guy we met by the sea earlier. The king's home is in danger and needs the power of his master and the Kamehameha to make things right, so the elder jumps into action and shows his true power. Goku is amazed by such a grand technique and decides to learn it from Master Roshi as a result, pretty much giving Goku the ability to use it during gameplay now, and being a pretty nifty way to do damage from this point forward. We also learn that apparently Master Roshi is familiar with Goku's grandfather, Gohan, and as a result, asks Goku to come back with him to train at his house. Goku accepts the offer, but only after getting all the Dragon Balls first, which takes us forward to the next stage, Pilaf's castle. Unfortunately, things take a turn for the not-so-good when we arrive, as our Dragon Balls get swiped by Pilaf himself, requiring us to get through his castle and re-obtain them before he uses them all to make his wish. Now, this castle was interesting as it's a rather big level and also has a variety of different routes and paths you can use to get through it. At the time, I thought it was pretty cool, but I'm gonna warn you right now, if you happen to be a completionist of sorts, these multiple routes can be a bit detrimental if your goal is to fully complete this game and get everything. You see, in addition to item upgrades, which by the way, this level did have an upgrade to increase the length of the Kamehameha meter, you can also find other items as well, which aren't really items that benefit you, but are rather collectibles of sorts. Usually ones that represent a personal item or reference of sorts from one of the Dragon Ball characters. They don't really do anything, but if you go to the game's collection room, you can see a bit of a trophy case that displays all of these items in full. But if you want to get all of them, this will require you to play certain levels, namely and mainly this one, multiple times, as you can't backtrack once you advance through certain areas and sections. And no, you can't use the old Donkey Kong Country start and select trick to take you out of the level and save the item. No, no, no. Once you get them, you have to finish the level to save it to your inventory. Something I personally wasn't crazy about, but whatever, it is what it is. I also had my first couple of deaths in this level too, but funnily enough, they weren't by enemies or combat, but rather bottomless pits. Yeah, I said the game's platforming and control was generally pretty good, but this level did have what I refer to as the really annoying Mega Man surprise enemy trap, where an enemy literally jumped out of a pit when I didn't realize, fired a shot at me, and knocked me into the pit with the game's knockback. Really cheap game. Thankfully the devs aren't super costly, as you'll start right back at the start of the room you're currently in, or wherever your last transition ended, but make sure you don't run out of lives, as that will likely force a complete restart of the entire level, and this level is a really long one that you probably will not want to redo anyway. Despite the length of this level and a few trouble spots though, I was still generally having a really good time with this game, so it didn't bother me too much. We made it back to Pilaf and challenged him and his cohort to a battle, where they both entered into giant robots and proceeded to face us down. These machines hit pretty hard, not gonna lie, but they honestly weren't too bad, as they were generally pretty slow and telegraphed. Plus, with our new Kamehameha Blast, we could safely hit them from a distance too. Plus, once one goes down, the one left by its lonesome shouldn't be too much of a threat, as they'll be rather limited with their attacking options. After taking down Pilaf, he surprises us one more time by knocking us out temporarily, and then proceeds to summon the dragon Shenron to make his wish. However, before he can claim his greatest desire, Oolong steps in to save the day and make the wish that every young male would want to have more than anything. Yeah, that's right. A visit from the Rock himself. How appropriate for this lovely rated E10 video game. Okay, for those who have seen this series, yeah, this wish is actually what it normally is. I just didn't want to risk demonetization here. Can you blame me? So now the Dragon Balls go out of commission and pretty much become normal stones for an entire year, before they ultimately become active again and appear somewhere else for the search to start all over again. What a perfect time for Goku to take up Master Roshi on his offer for training. So that sounds like a good idea to me. And hey, Goku is not the only one getting some training from the Roshi Master, but another young one named Krillin as well. Guess we have a bit of a training rival now, huh? Well, this rivalry gets immediately tested with the next stage, where Master Roshi has a little competition where both Krillin and Goku must find a rock in the forest and bring it back to him. Now, this level does have a time limit, and that timer pretty much forces the stage to be a no-death exercise, as pretty much every single death will put you right back at the beginning of the level, or at least the current phase of the test anyway. So be careful while going through this, especially since there are some bottomless pits here. When we find the stone, Krillin manages to swipe it from us, which introduces the next phase of the test, chasing Krillin to get back the rock. It's pretty much playing the entire stage in reverse though, so nothing that complicated. When we catch up to Krillin, we challenge him to a fight to see who gets to turn it in, prompting the stage's boss battle. Krillin honestly wasn't too hard here, but I think he'll be a great friendly rival for Goku moving forward, that's for sure. Master Roshi's next test is actually more of a minigame where you just break rocks. I didn't see a timer for this, but the music did get faster after a while, so there might be one and we just didn't realize it. Either way, just break as many rocks as you can until the counter gets to 0. That's pretty much all you do here. It did kind of remind me of those Street Fighter minigames where you try to destroy the car or brick wall though, which was kind of funny. And on the subject of Street Fighter, this is actually where the game takes a bit of an interesting turn, because this game actually has a 2D fighter gameplay style in addition to the beat-em-up style. Which, hey, I guess it makes sense, since there are one-on-one tournament arcs in this franchise, and it is about time for the first World Martial Arts Tournament to begin. So, hey, maybe this could be fun. I wasn't very optimistic though, just because, to be honest, I'm really not much of a fighting game fan. Trust me, the amount of times I've complained about quick input fighting game controls, let's just say my usual Twitch viewers could probably agree that the number is likely quite numerous at this point. I'm just not that great at doing various input sequences at quick intervals of time, and reading opponents' moves, much less trying to react to the moves they do perform. Really not much of a strong suit for me. However, this game's been pretty good so far, so I'll see what it amounts to at least. Well, I'll say this much, it's okay, I guess. For the story mode, I guess it's fine, since these sections won't happen very much, and I wouldn't say it's too hard to overcome the opponents. Heck, I don't think I actually died at all in this playthrough during these moments in story mode, or, well, at least when it wasn't scripted anyway. However, I do kind of feel like it's the weakest part of this game. Even if you are good at fighting games, the combat basically just comes down to repeating the same basic strategy all over again. Start assaulting your opponent with quick attacks, try to win the deadlocks to knock your opponent into the air, then pursue them to the apex of their knockback and slam them back down to do a lot of damage. Then potentially try to sneak in a Kamehameha Blast for some extra damage as well. And then pretty much repeat the process. That's really about it. Honestly, the trickiest part of this is winning the basic attack deadlocks to set up the basic pursuit combo, as in addition to pressuring and overwhelming your opponent, you will likely need to parry or dodge their flurry of attacks as well that they could potentially also set up. I didn't have to worry about this as much in the story mode, but I'll say it now, there is actually a side mode in this game that primarily features this gameplay style, and in that, being able to win these deadlocks will be very important, believe me. But more on that later. So yeah, it's a pretty simple and formulaic gameplay twist. It can be a bit too formulaic to be super interesting, but I wouldn't say it's too distracting or out of place either. After all, it does make the tournament arcs a little more unique, and they are pretty engaging parts of the Dragon Ball series in the first place, so I think it has a place here. We have 3 opponents we have to take down in this tournament: a giant dinosaur beast named Giron, a strong-willed warrior from the desert named Nam, and an elderly martial artist named Jackie Chun who... Wait a minute. is it just me or does Jackie Chun seem a little familiar? Actually, yeah, if you take away the hair, he kind of looks like... That's it! It's Blaine from Pokemon, of course. How did I not immediately see that? Anyway, the first two fights aren't too hard to win, but you will have your work cut out for you a little bit with Jackie Chun, as he will start with an additional health bar that you don't, so you'll have a little more to take down with him. But since it's the finals, I suppose that makes sense. I did manage to win each of my matches pretty easily though, which means Goku is the rightful winner of the first World Martial Arts Tournaments. Totally a result that definitely happened in the actual storyline. Yep, no non-canon video game adapted change here. Anyway, with the tournament over, Goku starts on his quest again to once again obtain the Dragon Balls. This time being led to a snowy village where the mayor of the place is being held up by a bunch of thugs in a nearby building called Muscle Tower. Goku climbs the tower to rescue the mayor and gets rid of all the bad guys along the way. This level was a very basic move back and forth as you ascend the tower and kick the butt of anyone who tries to stop you along the way. This place has also the luxury of having pretty much 3 different boss fights here. Technically 4 if you count the fact that one of them has 2 phases. The first boss is a giant metallic cyborg of sorts who can actually hit pretty hard if you let him, so keep your ass moving if you don't want to take damage. Then you take on a purple-clothed ninja, which was honestly pretty fun to take down if I'm being honest. Goku has a fighting style in this game that just works perfectly for avoiding the guy's moves, and it feels super rewarding to catch him off guard with your own fighting combos. However, I hope you're prepared for his second phase, because when you take him down, you then have to take him down 5 more times, just all at once now. This fight can be a little intimidating, but remember, you have the Kamehameha, which can theoretically attack all 5 of them at once, and each clone only has 1 health bar at this point. This was still kind of fun to fight though, even if I was taking more damage. Just made it more rewarding when it ultimately went down. We make it to the top of the tower, but are pretty much trapdoored into dealing with a giant purple monster now, which can't really take any normal damage. Well, that could pose a problem. Thankfully though, at the side of the arena you can make a little hole that when opened up will let the cold air and freeze the giant creep in place, allowing you to do damage and start taking him down. After taking care of this monstrosity, we leap back up the trapdoor and knock away the leader of the goons, saving the mayor in the process and obtaining one of the Dragon Balls again. How nice for us. We join up with Bulma again as we head to an underwater cavern of sorts. Apparently another one of the Dragon Balls is here, so let's do what we can to find it. Although it does seem like more of these soldiers from Muscle Tower are here as well, so maybe we can get some more answers about that as well. Hopefully anyway, but yeah, it's really just another underground cave level, kind of structured similar to the level we had back at Pilaf's castle, although a bit less windy and one general path forward. Also, for some reason the music here really sounded like music from Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. Let me know if you agree with that. About halfway through, we deal with another big boss, a skeleton robot pirate of some sort that's relatively easy to take down. Honestly, it seems like the bigger the enemy, the easier they are in this game, just because their attacks are pretty slow and predictable, and you're pretty quick yourself to dodge them. A little further into the cave, and we run into General Blue, one of the higher-ups of the Red Ribbon Army, who are apparently responsible for all the activity in this general area. Blue is not too bad to take down, although he does have some interesting powers, including one that can freeze Goku in place as he assaults him with whatever attack he desires. Overall, he's not too bad though, maybe just a little tougher than the purple ninjas we dealt with last time. With General Blue down, Goku and Bulma escape the cave before it collapses, and Goku manages to acquire the Dragon Ball as well, so mission successful. Although Bulma is not so happy about how this went, so she's probably out of any future endeavors. We reach the land of Korin for another Dragon Ball, but while we are there, we witness an atrocious act as the fearsome foe, Mercenary Tao, manages to assault and kill the father of a nice young girl named Upa. And this does not please Goku, not one bit. In a fit of rage, Goku takes charge against Tao in what seemed to be a scripted battle where Goku is supposed to lose. Now, I say seemed because at the time I had just resumed this game after not playing it for a few days, and I had to remember the fighting game controls again, meaning I had that disadvantage stacked against me, in addition to a further disadvantage in the health discrepancy. So I actually didn't know for sure if this was an always lose scenario or not, or if you could somehow win this fight as well. In the actual canon, Goku is supposed to lose, but hey, we already debunked that mentality a few times already, so I don't think that meant anything for sure. Looking back at it now, I think it is scripted, just because I couldn't do the pursuit combo against him, as every time I broke his guard, he just immediately fell to the ground, meaning I couldn't do that particular follow-up or any extra damage, while he could easily do that to me. Still though, not gonna claim anything in the interest of not wanting to get, actually'd by people in the comments section, so hope you understand. It seems like Goku needs to get powered up a bit more in order to take out Tao, so we head up to the top of Korin Tower to get some assistance from Korin himself. This little feline has us play another minigame, but instead of breaking rocks, we're just trying to catch him. Korin is pretty speedy, so you have to be fast and decisive with your moves here, and the closer you get to meeting the quota of catches you need, he gets more crafty and summons a bunch of mirages and illusions to mess with your head. Still though, it's not too hard, and if there is a time limit, it's pretty generous, so just keep at it and it should be over in no time. After this minigame, Goku's power apparently increases even more. Damn, if it's that easy to get stronger, I need to get a cat, I guess. And then we head back to the village to save Upa, who is about to get struck down by Tao as well. We have a rematch with the strong warrior, but this time we're able to fight him more efficiently, and take him down in the process, and repel his contract, which was apparently authorized by the Red Ribbon Army, the same group we've been at odds for the last few levels. We get directed to the Army's main base of operations, also where the last Dragon Balls we need are located, and head on over there with the promise to Upa that we will return to make things right with what happened with her father. We arrive at the base of the Red Ribbon Army and proceed to fight through it, starting with a very quick flying Nimbus section because I guess the game realized that we've only had one of those so far and needed to meet a slightly bigger quota. This ends pretty quickly though as we make landfall and continue the rest of the assault on foot. This is basically just 4 long screens of non-stop fighting, with maybe a few doors here and there that include healing or collection items, so don't be surprised if you're tired of fighting by the end of this. You also start to notice weaker versions of the jacked up cyborg boss as well, a classic staple of beat-em-ups where an early boss becomes a generic enemy in the late game stages. Eventually we make it to where the leader of the Red Ribbon Army is currently stationed and meet Commander Red. Only briefly though, as his power is immediately usurped when Officer Black takes him out and he assumes control of the group instead. Well, regardless of who the leader is, we need those Dragon Balls, so I guess it's time for more battling. Commander Black, honestly probably the boss I struggled with the most in this playthrough. He's in a giant mech robot, much like the ones we fought at Pilaf's Castle earlier in the game, but I gotta say, this one really knows how to throw fists. Quite literally too, it has a really annoying basic attack where it slams its fist down, and it's really good at tracking you and countering you if you try to avoid it. So many times I tried sticking to this guy to unload damage on it, but this attack punished me nearly every single time, and it got really obnoxious as a result. And that's not the only attack it has either, as it has a couple of long-range projectile and missile attacks as well, including one where it flies to the background and launches a missile that is pretty much unavoidable, and will do heavy damage to you if you let it explode. That's the key though, if you let it explode. I found this out in a much later attempt, but you can actually send it back at the boss if you try to reflect it back as it's coming down, and it will do major damage to him instead. This took more than 5 attempts for me, and was honestly more challenging than I was expecting after so much of the game was honestly pretty easy. Although I did almost get him down on my second attempt, so any further failures were probably more due to a result of me getting greedy and impatient. Really, his attacks are pretty well choreographed, so if you watch him carefully and react accordingly, and most importantly, don't try to do too many basic combo attacks to avoid that ruthless punch he has, you should be fine, especially the more you incorporate your Kamehameha attack into the combos as well. And with Commander Black out of the picture now, the entire Ribbon army has been wiped out, even before Goku's friends make it to assist. However, one of the Dragon Balls is still missing, so Master Roshi suggests seeking out a fortune teller named Baba to determine the location of the missing one, since Goku's radar is no longer working for some reason. Baba decides to help us out if we complete some trials for her, which basically consist of taking down 2 bosses. So, first up we have Akuman, or Spike as he's better known in most English adaptations. He's a devil from Hell who likes to fly around and generally be very annoying to land attacks on, especially at the end when it seems like he does anything to stay off of solid ground. Although, I guess if you have wings, you generally want to play to those advantages. Apparently this guy can be quite dangerous too, as he has an attack that can basically one-hit kill you if you don't dodge it. Funnily enough, he did not use it against Goku, or at the very least I avoided it without realizing how dangerous it is. Also, be careful of that giant gap in the middle of the arena. I'm willing to bet an inopportune amount of uncontrollable knockback could very easily end a run if you aren't careful here. With Akuman down, we have one more fighter to take on, but his identity is quite mysterious. Also, we're doing this fight in the 2D battling style and not the beat-em-up style for some reason. I honestly couldn't say why. If you had no issue with Tao, you should have no issue here either. It's pretty standard stuff. When we win, we actually find out that the mysterious fighter's identity, and hey, it's Goku's grandfather Gohan. How nice. Looks like we get a nice family reunion in addition to our fortune, huh? Anyway, Baba reveals that the Dragon Ball is only a few hundred kilometers away in a car, so Goku immediately heads in that direction to grab it, and who do we find out are the thieves? Oh, it's Pilaf and his party again. Okay, well, I think we can take them on no problem. Oh, but Slim, wait! They have 3 robots this time, and they're joined together as one giant super robot tower, and... Like I said, no problem. Seriously, this was actually easier than the first fight, believe it or not. Or maybe we're just that much stronger. I don't know. Let's just move on to the next section of the game. With all the Dragon Balls collected again, we once again summon Shinron and fulfill the promise we made to Upa to revive her father. So, yep, once again the Dragon Balls must now reset and the cycle starts all over again. Which can only mean it's time for the next World Martial Arts Tournament. How exciting. Goku is once again joining the fight, and he will most certainly have some real tough competition awaiting him this time. Once again, it's basically just 3 one-on-one fights, and you handle them all in pretty much the same fashion as you did the previous tournament. The first opponent for Goku is Chaozu, who really isn't that hard. Then, Goku comes face to face with his training rival Krillin, and takes him on in a battle that also isn't too hard. Well, surely Goku's last opponent will put up a challenge, as next up we have Tien. And like Jackie Chun in the last tournament, he does start with an extra health bar over Goku, so I think he must really have his work cut out for... Oh wait, I knocked out half of his health before he even did a bit of damage to me? Okay, yeah, this was a really easy tournament. Somehow even seemed easier than the first one, which is honestly kind of a shame considering how fun this arc was in the anime, or at least it was when I watched it with my friends a few short months ago. Yeah, I just don't think the one-on-one fighter gameplay really does these parts of the narrative justice, and while I can kind of understand why, considering the anime and manga were likely allowed so much more freedom for storytelling and build-up, it does kind of feel like it's just here because it needs to be. Wouldn't say it's really a negative per se, but again, it just kind of loses a bit of the charm, I think. After all, Tien doesn't even use his maximum velocity attack, or whatever the hell it's called. Anyway, after Goku takes down Tien, a result that is surely, definitely, supposedly, absolutely, unmistakingly, indisputably likely to happen, The group decides to go out and celebrate another tournament victory for the books. However, after Krillin makes the decision to make a quick run back to the stadium to retrieve the Dragon Balls that Goku foolishly left behind, disaster strikes when Goku hears a loud scream, and before he can make it back to the stadium in time to check on his friend, Krillin is attacked by a monster and tragically killed, and the Dragon Balls are stolen from Goku's possession. In a fit of understandable rage, since Krillin is completely awesome and did not deserve that, Goku takes the skies on the flying Nimbus to locate the murderer and finds the flying creature Tambourine, who clearly has no shame for what he has done. Goku decides to take the creep on, which means it's time for another boss fight, this one using the flying Nimbus controls. Now, just to warn you, Tambourine hits really hard in this fight. All of his attacks do really good damage, pretty much a huge chunk of one health bar, and if you are not prepared to avoid the attacks, you could have a rough go at this one. As long as you recognize some of his patterns though, you should be fine, especially towards the end when he literally repeats an attack 3 times in a row before stopping for a bit. So, after that third one goes by, unload as much as you can on the guy, whether it's a bunch of direct attacks or even the Kamehameha specials. I did admittedly die a couple of times on this fight as a result, but I still feel like I got through quicker than the Commander Black fight from earlier at least. Tambourine is not happy we beat him, but he does manage to get a good hit on us before he goes down for good, knocking us down in the world below. Just who was this guy, and who exactly does he work for? All questions will surely be answered next time on the next Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure. See you guys next time, and oh right, that's not my format. Let's just keep going. We find ourselves in a new location alongside another person by the name of Yajirobe. He helps us back on our feet and even gives us one of the Dragon Balls he has obtained as well. How convenient. However, this victory and our recovery is short-lived as another baddie by the name of Piccolo arrives on the scene. Piccolo is outstandingly powerful, and although we do try to resist his power, the brawl starts with him having 4 life bars while we only have a little less than half of one. In other words, yeah, I think we're supposed to lose this one. Another scripted loss for Goku here. That's a shame. This loss makes Goku realize that he needs to get even more powerful to take on Piccolo, so he and Yajirobe head back to Korin's tower to see what can be accomplished. Meanwhile though, and this is unfortunately all quickly summarized as opposed to shown on screen, but Piccolo goes on a bit of a villain spree here, killing not only Master Roshi, but also the Eternal Dragon Shenron himself, after making a wish with all the Dragon Balls he collected to make himself younger and even more powerful. Damn, the game really glossed over all of that, huh? That's like the equivalent of me spending 10 minutes on a really detailed story of how I went to get the mail at the post office, but then in the last 10 seconds saying, then afterwards I made billions in the stock market, lost it all investing in jigsaw puzzles, had major heart transplant surgery, got married 2 times, and then cooked lobster for dinner. I can't help but feel like people would really want some of those blanks filled in, don't you? Anyway, Korin has a solution to make Goku even more powerful, but it's incredibly risky as no person has survived this type of training before, as it requires literally consuming actual poison. Everyone is hesitant about Goku going along with this procedure, but Goku's mind is made up, so screw it, we're ballin'. The next level is yet another cave level. How fun. But this cave is actually treated as more of a maze of sorts. You navigate all these pathways, looking for the right door, and after you take on 2 shadowy and dark forms from the past, you have completed the trial. The 2 shadows are basically just refights of 2 of your friends from the past. The first one is against Dark Yamcha, who also has Dark Puar along with him. Ah, look at the dark and evil kitty dropping bombs on us, how cute. The fight is really not much different than it was before. Yamcha is a little more powerful and more aggressive, but that's really about it. After advancing a few more rooms, we run into the main boss of this area, another refight with an old friend of ours, but this time it's Krillin. I guess this one is just about overcoming our sadness of our best friends passing, and heck, even the music playing at this point did admittedly get to me a little bit. Still though, the fight isn't too hard, as Krillin's attacks are pretty predictable. Do look out for his own Kamehameha attacks though, as sometimes he can counter yours with his own, which really took me off guard during one of my attempts. However, him using this is pretty telegraphed and gives you a pretty good opening of putting some good damage on him in retaliation. With Dark Krillin defeated, we have overcome the trial and Goku is now ready for action and ready to take down King Piccolo. Goku heads to the enemy's headquarters of Chao Castle and arrives to see Piccolo and his henchman Drum savagely beating up on Tien, our rival from the second tournament arc. Not wanting to deal with us, Piccolo sends Drum to fight us instead, and I have to admit, this was somehow the easiest boss fight in the entire game. I don't know if I was just super pumped and on my game as I figured I was at the end here, but obliterating the little green dude was super satisfying. After he goes down, the final level of the game starts, and it's a very linear gauntlet to the very end. The Mook soldiers here are the toughest basic enemies we've fought so far, some of them even being able to block our basic attacks with no issue whatsoever. But if you've made it this far, you should have no problems here. Eventually, we make it to the end and come face to face with Piccolo once more. But, of course, we have to take him down in a one-on-one fight instead. I was a little disappointed that the final boss was fought in this fashion, as, again, 80% of the game was a beat-em-up, but whatever, beggars can't be choosers. This is definitely the hardest one-on-one fight in the entire game, though, that's for certain, as Piccolo has a whopping 5 health bars now, while we only have 2. However, give Goku an inch and he'll take it a foot, as I managed to weaken the green dude down and pull off the upset on my very first attempt. Heck, I even had a really sweet finisher too, as I perfectly predicted him teleporting behind me when I was charging up my final Kamehameha blast. Did it again! Get wrecked! The rule of King Piccolo has now come to an end, and Goku starts undoing all the pain and turmoil caused by Piccolo, restoring the life of Shenron and all of his other friends in the process. And with that, I guess that seems like a good place to end as the credits start to roll and our advanced adventures come to an end. Game completes. Now you're probably wondering, that's usually when I show my completed game time, right? Well, yeah, but I have to admit here, I actually had a lot of fun playing this game. And I did say from the get-go if there was ever a game I wanted to play more of and maybe go for a more 100% completion route, I would have that liberty to do so. So I decided to take the extra plunge into more of this game. Once you beat story mode, or just as you're playing it and unlocking stuff along the way, you actually unlock a couple of different side modes you can play in addition to just the main campaign. For one, you can actually play the story mode again, but this time as Krillin, Goku's friendly rival. Krillin's mode is really not much different from Goku's. He plays pretty much all the same stages, although his cutscenes are removed, the minigames and tutorials are removed, 2 of the 3 Krillin boss fights are altered to be against Goku instead, although the final Krillin fight is still against Dark Krillin for some reason. And it's basically just, here's adventure mode again, but without all the fluff, and just the actual gameplay stuff, which I guess is fine. Krillin also controls slightly differently from Goku as well, although admittedly not by much. He loses a bit of range not having a staff to use, but makes up for it by having a double jump, which actually kind of allows him to move a bit faster than Goku in some respects. I think I enjoyed playing as Goku more though, as his staff just gives him so much more range and combo potential, but it was an interesting take on a slightly different character. I also really like Krillin's profile picture in the top left. He looks so frickin' smug. Definitely would like to have this as like an emote or something because it's really cool. You also get 3 unique items in the collection room by completing Krillin's story, so it was at this point I realized the collection room was probably going to end up being my 100% completion goal here. Most of the items will be gotten through the story mode, and the next mode I'll be talking about the extra mode, with only one other collectible being gotten outside of that, but more on that later. Moving on to the extra mode, this mode is also kind of the main adventure mode again, although you technically have free range of what stages you can go to in any particular order you want, as well as what character you want to use. Most of the stages also have new rooms and areas you can access, as the original story mode had giant red doors that you could not open or use for the life of you. But in Extra mode, those doors are fully open now, and you can venture into them and get even more items for the collection room. I was admittedly not really excited about this at first, just because it seemed like I was just going through the adventure mode for a third time now. But little did I know that Extra mode actually had a little more in store that I hadn't realized yet. You see, 7 of the items you can collect in Extra mode for the collection room are the 7 namesake items of the series, the titular Dragon Balls. Most of the stages in the game will usually have one laying around somewhere, and if you manage to get all 7, you actually get a really neat unlockable in the process. You see, also in Extra mode, you can collect little avatars or profile icons of certain characters from the game, usually of fighters you fought or had a boss battle against in some form. If you collect their portrait and have all 7 Dragon Balls, you can actually play around with that character in Extra mode. I thought this feature was incredibly cool because now, if you have a favorite character from the series that isn't Goku or Krillin, you can now use them through almost all the main gameplay sections of the game. And yes, there are some exceptions for some characters obviously, most notably the Flying Nimbus and one-on-one battle stages, but still, the fact that there is an option like this to begin with was a really neat idea, especially for a game like Dragon Ball that has a very wide and numerous cast of characters. I tried playing as a few of the characters once I got all the Dragon Balls, and although it was cool, I will say that it was rather difficult getting a feel for their playstyles though, as Goku and Krillin were just developed and programmed more smoothly and optimally. My favorite part in this section was probably either infinitely floating around with Tien, or trying to beat some of the early game bosses with the Red Ribbon Army's boss mech. Really fun stuff, I must say. After getting all the collectibles in both story modes and the Extra mode, I noticed that there was still one collectible unaccounted for, and it turns out this one can only be gotten in the survival mode for the one-on-one 2D fighter. You pretty much have to beat this mode using King Piccolo, whom you should have already unlocked by this point by just the sheer nature of completing both story modes, but I believe you also unlock the general survival mode as well in this fashion. Your goal in this mode is to basically survive 11 back-to-back one-on-one fights. Thankfully, you have 3 health bars and all of your opponents only have 1, so you do have an advantage here. However, your health does not restore in between fights, so it's pretty much the equivalent of your 3 health bars versus 11. Not exactly a promising difference. My first run of this went pretty decently, as I made it all the way to Goku, whom I thought was the final opponent at the time, but I just did not have enough health to survive this last push, so back to the start I went. Unfortunately though, I didn't see Goku again for a really long time. I'm not sure what went wrong exactly, but I was kinda struggling with this for a while. I kept having major roadblocks during the Krillin and Tien fights, where I swear they kept parrying my attacks effortlessly, and I started losing my grip on parrying as well, so I kept having runs where I lost too much damage in one fight, or I just got flat out eliminated. This took me over an hour before I started having some better success again, starting to get more familiar with Piccolo's parries, and then also discovering the inputs for the super special move, where in Piccolo's case was just an even bigger laser blast that pretty much can KO an opponent with the right timing. You don't really need this if you have a handle over the parrying, but it was nice to have if there was an opponent that just kept getting the best of you, like Krillin was with me. I finally made it back to Goku again and absolutely obliterated him, but then I found out about the secret 11th fight in the form of Cyborg Tao. Not a thing at all in this game's story mode, but is a character that shows up in the final Dragon Ball tournament arc apparently, which again this game doesn't cover, but still a pretty neat Easter egg I guess. Thankfully I was still riding the high of this run's success and was able to take him down, beating survival mode and obtaining the last item from the collection room, and also unlocking Cyborg Tao for the one-on-one fighting mode in the process, but yeah, like I'm gonna play that again. With the collection room complete, there was really only one last main menu option to speak of, but I wouldn't even say this was that important, as it's just the minigame option, and it's mainly just the two minigames from the story mode, the rock-breaking one and the catch corn one. In addition to those, though, the other two options are basically a boss endurance of all the beat-em-up boss fights in the game, styled very similarly to how the arena works in the Kirby games, with even a small rest area in between each fight where you have an option to heal if you need to. And if you decide not to heal, those healing items will stick around until you ultimately use them. And finally, a very quick can you beat up all the Mook soldiers in this one room before the time limit expires challenge. I don't think you actually get anything for beating these, although you can unlock some additional extra mode characters through some of these minigames, which means you can also use them in the last two challenges as well, which is at least something. I would have potentially considered trying the boss rush until completion, but after one-on-one kind of took me to my limit, and since there was no reward for this, I decided to stop here and finally consider my playthrough complete. After all, the GBA challengers even thought I did more than necessary to beat this game, so yeah, I think I'm done. So without further delay, I can finally declare this game complete. But yeah, this game was excellent and a really nice surprise for me. I went into this not really knowing much at all about Dragon Ball, aside from the name of a few key characters and the most basic premise, but I came out of it really wanting to know and see more about this franchise, which I think is a really good bar to meet for a video game based on the licensed series to begin with. In fact, since the playthrough, I've actually started watching the Dragon Ball anime on my own time, and have thoroughly enjoyed myself in the process, so I think this game did an excellent job with representing the franchise it initially sought out to capitalize off of. And heck, even a number of my friends who like Dragon Ball, and trust me, that's a huge number, were equally impressed with what this game brought to the table, some even saying, damn, why have I not even played this yet? It's also quite easily one of the best beat-em-up games I've ever played, striking a nice balance between fast fighting action, but also very manageable difficulty. Maybe a little on the easy side, some might say, but after playing numerous games of this genre where too much losing results in basically losing all of your progress and starting the entire game over again, yeah, I'd take this any day of the week. I do think the game loses a bit of steam when it turns into a one-on-one 2D fighting game, though. It definitely should have just stuck with the beat-em-up gameplay and maybe focused the fighting game stuff on a different game engine entirely. Perhaps one where they could have further developed the gameplay and not made the one-on-one stuff feel so simplistic. Because in its current form, it's really just a one-on-one parrying simulator, so not very engaging. At least to me, anyway. I think the repetition of playing all the same game again multiple times could also be seen as a bit of a low point too, but at least the repetition did offer some neat bonuses, like being able to play as different characters. That's the kind of stuff people love to see in a game like this, and it does make it at least a little bit of a fresh experience each time you play it. Just remember that you don't necessarily have to do all of it at once like I did here, so definitely don't be afraid to spread those playthroughs out a little. Let's get to the GBA's rating, shall we? In terms of overall quality, I'm giving this a strong 4 out of 5. What can I say? It really surpassed my expectations, and although not a perfect game, it does make a strong case for itself. In fact, in terms of personal enjoyment, I'm actually stepping it up to a 4.5 here. I had so much fun with this game that it got me interested in checking out the main series and source material, as well as just playing more of this game outside of the GBA's challenge in general, so it definitely struck a very strong chord with me. In terms of difficulty, I went with a 2 out of 5. It's really not too hard. In fact, if it wasn't for survival mode, I'd even be pressured to say 1.5. But it did show some teeth at points for certain bosses and challenges, so it definitely wasn't free, but definitely further from brutal. So yeah, that'll do it for our Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure. We'll surely be back in the future for some other Dragon Ball narrative experiences, as well as some fighting games and the card game as well. But for our next narrative experience, we'll be looking at Legacy of Goku, which I hear is not very good. Great. Well, see you for that someday in the future, but for now, let's just take a look at the next game we'll be playing for this challenge. Okay guys, thank you for watching this summary. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to leave a comment and or like on the video, as those will really help me in these videos out. And stay tuned for future summaries of this series. If you also want to watch full playthroughs of these games for this challenge, check out the video description for a full playlist of everything that's been uploaded and exported so far. And if you're curious about what I'm playing right now for the challenge, be sure to stop by my Twitch channel to see what my current progress is. Just be warned, I'll be a lot further ahead of where we are for these summaries, so keep that in mind. This has been SlimKirby in the GBA series, and I'll talk to you fine people next time. Later, folks.